Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Abitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security-oriented policies to guide the state of Israel. We are a movement of more than 20,000 people, including many reserve officers and operators from all branches of the Israel Defense establishment. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning in to these briefings, so that we can bring you behind the headlines what is really happening here in Israel. It's a great privilege to be joined today by Colonel Gidi Harari, the head of the first responders teams in the northern Moshav of Sha'ar Yashuv, and a member of their security squad. Colonel Harari, thank you so much for joining. It's a great pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
We've spent a lot of time on these briefings talking about Gaza, and we've touched on Hezbollah, but it's really unique and important to have you join us because you're up in the north. That's where you live. That's your community. So if you could kind of just explain what life is like up there now, what it was like before October 7th. The floor is yours to introduce yourself and share a little bit about that area.
Thank you very much, Moshe. Well, actually, as Moshe said, I live in the north in a moshav called Sha'ar Yashuv, which is in the eastern part of the border between Israel and Lebanon. We are about 2.5 kilometers from the border. Our moshav is evacuated. We live in the moshav between 500 inhabitants and another 200 students that live and study in a local college near Kiryat Shmone. And now we are left in the moshav about 120 people, part of them from the first response team, and part of them are owners of farmers and that lives in the moshav and doesn't want to leave their farms, and they are treating the trees and working in the farms. Most of the north is evacuated. About 80,000 people were evacuated from the Israeli northern border 4 months ago, living in hotels, and actually most of the area is deserted, and many IDF soldiers and troops in the north. And every day by day there are shootings between Hezbollah and the IDF. Most of the shooting of Hezbollah is being done against civil targets, and also, of course, military targets like strategic the northern post in Tzfat, or military posts that are on the border itself. But most of the shooting is being done with the rockets and the anti-tanks missile against civil houses in the moshavim and the kibbutzim along the border. Today, for example, there was shooting in the morning on Metula and Kiryat Shmone and Kfar Yuval. They shot 2 anti-tanks missiles on a deserted civil house. And of course, Israel, the IDF, mostly the Air Force, is attacking military posts of Hezbollah close to the border, and also inside Lebanon, including in the last few days in Saida, which is about 50 kilometers from the border in the western side. Nabatia, which is the main city in the eastern border with Lebanon, which is a main city, and were attacked. There was an attack on Damascus in Syria. Many of the targets that the IDF was attacking in the last 10 days, I think, were high-value targets, what we call HVT, meaningful targets, mainly trying to get target officers of Hezbollah or Iranian high-value targets in Syria. And it's an ongoing war that we feel it very good along the border, and in Tel Aviv you feel it less, but there is war in the north.
Let me ask you, what do you think right now the IDF's goal is in their confrontations with Hezbollah? Is it to avoid a war? Is it to pave the road for a war? What do you think is behind the scenes going on?
Well, of course, I don't know exactly what is the war plan, and even if I knew, I couldn't speak about it. But I think that that the main issue today is to prevent the war, but we need to take in account that at least I don't believe that we are going to get a solution with Hezbollah by any kind of diplomatic agreement. We are talking about the UN Resolution 1701, which was signed in 2006, and 2 years afterwards it was not accomplished. And there is no reason for Hezbollah to start doing it today. And the UN cannot make them do it. And I think, sadly, I'm telling you, that at the end of the day, we'll need to do some kind of military maneuver in the south of Lebanon in order to push them up to the south, to the north, and not to let them be so close to the border. Hezbollah is a proxy of the Iranian Revolution Guard. And the main idea, the philosophy of the Iranian government and the Iranian Revolution Guard is to export the Islamic Revolution all over the Middle East and the world. So they are not going anywhere. They are here to stay. It's not like Hamas or another terrorist organization. They are part of they are a party, a legal party in Lebanon, Hezbollah. Actually, they are running the country there. The Iranians are helping them with a lot of money, a lot of arms, and the main goal is to export the Iranian revolution. This is the main philosophy.
Now, let me ask you, given the current climate in the Middle East and what we've clearly seen, our enemy's willingness to attack, UN Resolution 1701, if somehow it could be achieved, would it even be meaningful? Or would that not even be enough to deter Hezbollah from being a threat to Israel?
Well, sadly, I say it's meaningful, because this resolution was signed in 2006, and since then Hezbollah changed totally their firepower, their strategy, their capabilities, and today it's not enough. Today they can shoot rockets from 30 kilometers inside Lebanon, all over Israel. They have anti-tank missile, the Kornet, a Russian anti-tank missile, which they can fire them for 10 kilometers. Their geographic brigades on the border are people that are living on the villages on the border. So when you're speaking about pushing Hezbollah 10 kilometers to the north, it cannot be done because the people are living in the villages. They are not leaving their homes. So I don't see any diplomatic agreement or UN resolution that can solve this situation that we have now. And the most dangerous thing is that all of this can be changed by one rocket that will fall in the wrong place. I mean that if one rocket will fall now, of course I don't wish it, but if there is a rocket that will fall on some place and there will be 10, 15 killed people in Israel, that might start the war in 5 minutes. So it's very, very delicate situation.
For sure. Maybe you could spend a few minutes explaining to our audience, most of whom are located in the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, what exactly your preparations are, your emergency squad where you live. Are you worried about an October 7th type repeat in the north? Like, what does it mean to harden the security of where you are?
Well, first of all, we've doubled the quantity of operatives that are in the first response team in all the moshavim and all the kibbutzim, and all of them are with arms. Everything is with fortifications, and I will not give any details, but each of these response team are supposed to defend their own houses, their own moshav or their own kibbutz, letting the IDF military corps to concentrate on the border itself. Of course, that rates of Radwan power, this is the main issue that we are concerned about. This is the main issue that we are concerned about. And of course, it's not 100% proof that they cannot do it.
And are you able to just explain a little bit about the topography, the terrain where you live? Because, you know, when people saw the videos of Hamas breaching the Gaza border and just traveling through, that should never happen up in the north, but how does the terrain, the topography vary, and what would that change?
Well, the terrain in the north is totally not like the terrain in the south. The border is 130 kilometers border from the west to the east, starting from the Mediterranean Sea. It's all mountains and valleys, a lot of, well, not jungles as you know, jungles, the Amazonic jungles, but it's what we call Mediterranean jungle. Not very high trees, but very close. You can get into close to the border very silently without seeing you. It's a very hard terrain to fight in. It's a very hard terrain to gather information about on it, because it's not plain and open. It's not easy, but in the as you go to the east, Where I live, it's more open terrain, but it's like a big valley. It's the north part of the Hula Valley, and but it's not. It's very hard to cross it because there are a lot of boulders, big boulders, and a lot of water. Yes, this is the terrain.
It happens to be a beautiful part of the country. There's
The
no
most
denying
beautiful, the most beautiful part of the country.
Absolutely. So when looking at the borders of Israel, the Egypt border, the Jordan border, would you say the northern border is the most vulnerable because of both that terrain and the presence of Hezbollah? Is that the greatest risk right now?
No doubt, no doubt. This is the most vulnerable border today in Israel.
And what do you think it will take? And first of all, thank you again for taking all of these questions. Thank you for living up there, defending our northern border and your many, many years of service.
It's our house, no?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you think it will take to bring those 80,000 people back to their homes? How can that happen?
Well, to bring them home, they need to feel that Hezbollah cannot cross the border and doing some kind of raids like was done in the south. This is the main issue. The rockets and the anti-tanks missile, it's also an issue, but these are things that people are it's more known to the people. But the issue of the raids that might happen, this is the main issue. If people will not know that the IDF give them the security of 100% that it won't happen, they will not go back.
And many of our viewers are writing in questions. A number of them are asking about the type of surveillance that exists on the northern border. Meaning, you mentioned the trees and the terrain and the mountains. Is there technology somehow monitoring the border that helps detect potential infiltrations? Are you able to comment on that at all?
Of course, I cannot come into details about it. There is a lot of technology. But let me tell you something. There is nothing that can be instead of what you call boots on the ground. The soldiers on the border, not on the military post, but on the ground, ambushes and all this. This is the main issue. The technology is very important, but boots on the ground is the most important.
For sure. And I don't know if you can comment on this, but do you feel like the IDF and that the country is taking seriously enough the threat for Hezbollah, or is too much focus being given to Gaza?
First of all, it's clear today that the main focus is in Gaza. We cannot argue about it, and it's okay. It's the right thing to do. But I think that the IDF is taking very seriously what is happening in the north. And we, as groups of first response in all the settlements, the moshavim, the kibbutzim, we take it very seriously. And we are very alerted all the time.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience? Anything we haven't touched on, an important message that's emerging from this war that you think it's important for the Anglo community to hear?
First of all, I don't know if people are saying it, but I think that we, the people of Israel, must thank the best and biggest alliance that we have with the United States. and it's not something that it's not obvious. It's not obvious. And the speech of President Biden on October 8th, I think it was amazing. And we appreciate very much the American support. It's very important to say it to all our audience. We appreciate it very much. Then it's clear for us that we are fighting for our state, for our home, for our willing to live in the state of Israel, and we are prepared to fight it as long as we need.
Amazing. Thank you so much. You know, we spend a lot of time in these briefings discussing the resilience of Israeli society. So to hear that from you, from your vantage point, is so very important. So thank you so much for joining me on this briefing, and thank you for sharing your message with our viewers. And I hope we can have you back.
Thank you very much.
Future updates.
Whenever you want, I'm here.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to spend a few minutes just sharing a take with our audience, which is not about the North. It's not about the important work that Colonel Harari is doing, but nonetheless, a message that I think is important for people to hear. So since we've been doing these briefings, we started these briefings on October 8th, the day after the October 7th massacre. And I just want to really take this opportunity to thank all of our viewers for watching these briefings, for sharing these briefings. There are many places that you can go to get your news, that you can hear discussion about the war. And we certainly don't take it for granted that you choose our programming. And everyday viewers email me, they send me messages with comments, suggestions, questions, of course, criticism. Thank you so much for all of that. Many of the speakers I bring on and the discussions that we have are shaped by the interest and the feedback of all of our viewers. I'm not always able to respond to every message. I'm not able to ask all the questions that are being posed, but everything is seen and everything is certainly appreciated. And many of our viewers, and this is a super important point, many of your viewers have told me that these briefings connect them in a more personal way to what is happening here in Israel, especially because of the informal, sometimes spontaneous nature of the briefings. But I want to issue a warning, a disclaimer, if you will, that these briefings cannot and should not take the place of real in-person engagement, right? Actually meeting people and talking with them. And let me just give you a personal anecdote to explain what I mean. On October 7th, I woke up in the morning and looked out the window, and it was very clear that something was wrong. You could see the smoke coming from the distance of spots where rockets had made impact. But it was Shabbat, it was Simchat Torah, so I went to synagogue with my 9-year-old son. And not long after the services began, the first alarms went off. We made a quick dash for the synagogue's bomb shelter in the basement. And I stood there packed in with everyone else, my son squeezing my hand, kind of thinking in my head, when the alarms go off and they stop, what's going to be my plan? Where am I going to run home and check to see everyone is okay? And when the services resumed in the synagogue, eventually more rockets came, and we moved the prayer services to the basement of the synagogue. And every time a siren went off, we just got down on the floor in our place, with our hands over our heads, my 9-year-old son by my side. And it wasn't too long before the 20, 25-year-old boys in the synagogue kind of started disappearing, being called for duty. And it was clear that what was going on was more than just a few rockets. But I have to say that it didn't become real until the rabbi of the synagogue, Rabbi Lichtenstein, made an announcement. He got up in front of the congregation, which was, again, at that point in the basement, and he said, "We are in war." And then he gave instructions about what that meant. And I have to say, hearing him say those words, "We are in war," of course, in Hebrew, at that point, something clicked in my head. And even though I had already seen the rockets and seen boys getting calls from their commanding officers and going out, the truth didn't hit. It didn't register until those words, "We are in war." And the reason I share this is because there's a very big difference between knowing something, learning something, seeing something, tuning into these briefings, versus really feeling it and having it register for what it is, having that aha moment. And the first week after October 7th in Israel was intense for everyone. But I'll tell you something. Because of my line of work, who I associate with, I talk a lot about the war. But with all the briefings and the projects and the work here at IDSF with soldiers, that we're in war moment, that lying on the floor in the synagogue and understanding, wow, something is up here, didn't happen so often. It doesn't happen when I view these briefings. It doesn't happen in much of the work that I do, but it does happen when I stand in Kfar Aza and speak with people who went through the horrors of October 7th. It happens when I go to the funeral or the shiva of soldiers who have died. And it happens when I visit a base and hear and see the brutalities which happened on October 7th. But I don't get that from these briefings. So these briefings are important. Don't get me wrong. I hope you watch them. I hope you share them. I hope you learn a lot and continue to participate. But don't let these briefings replace a real personal connection for what is happening here in Israel. And I'll tell you that when I was growing up in Chicago, attending Jewish day school, every school would always have a Holocaust survivor come and share their story. And no responsible day school would let the school year go by without inviting a survivor to come and share their story, because reading a book, watching a film about the Holocaust is not the same as meeting a real person with a real story. So I ask all of you who are clearly invested, involved, connected to this war in Israel, to do everything you can to hear the stories in person from the survivors, from the soldier heroes, from all of the heroes of October 7th. Bring them to your communities, or better, much better, come to Israel and meet them here. And if you're not able to do this yourself, then pay for your children and your grandchildren to do it. We are in war. It's a hard war. Many lives have been lost. All indications suggest that the war is not ending anytime soon. But let's not allow the war to become the norm, to desensitize us from the pain, the loss, and the hate. Please make every effort on a personal level to provide that opportunity for yourself or for others. With that, I thank you for joining today. I thank you for tuning in, for caring. I thank Colonel Harari for participating today. And I wish everyone should stay healthy. And until Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern time, stay safe, stay strong, take care.